Welcome. I believe today is not just another day. It's a divine appointment. You didn't stumble onto this moment by accident. Something good is about to awaken in your spirit. You've been looking at things through the lens of logic, through what you can see, touch, measure. But what if I told you that the greatest breakthroughs, the most remarkable moments, don't come when everything makes sense? They come when you start seeing beyond the logical. Maybe the facts are against you. The report says it's terminal. The bank account says there's not enough. The relationship looks too broken to fix. But friend, there's a higher truth than what's logical. When you live with a heart full of faith, when you trust what God has whispered more than what life has shouted, you'll start experiencing the supernatural in the middle of the impossible. There are moments in life when everything appears to add up perfectly. You made the right decisions, you followed the right path, and everything turned out just as expected. But there are also times when the numbers don't align, when the outcome doesn't reflect the effort, and when the road ahead looks blocked. It's in those moments when reason falls short and the facts don't support your hope that a different kind of vision is needed. So often, we live by what we can see and explain. We rely on what others have done, what the experts say, and what the past has shown. We put everything into neat categories and expect life to follow predictable rules. But some of the greatest transformations happen outside of those rules. When nothing made sense, and you still moved forward. When it didn't seem to add up, but something inside you whispered, keep going. That's not foolishness. That's a higher kind of insight. A deeper knowing. You might not be able to explain it, but you can feel it. You can sense that even though it seems unlikely, something greater is working behind the scenes. There are people who miss their breakthroughs, not because they didn't try hard enough, but because they couldn't see past the obvious. They looked at the facts and decided it wasn't worth believing anymore. They heard the doctor's report and gave up the fight. They saw the bank account and decided they couldn't make it. But what if the outcome wasn't dependent on the evidence? What if it was waiting on your refusal to quit? Sometimes the greatest victories are hidden behind walls of confusion. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look promising. But those are often the exact conditions that surround a turnaround. Why? Because the most beautiful outcomes aren't meant to be predicted. They're meant to be trusted into existence. There was once a man who was told he'd never walk again. The reports were final. The scans were clear. But somewhere deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. He didn't know how. He didn't have a timeline. But he believed in something more than data. And over time, little by little, strength returned. Movement came. Hope expanded. He stood, not because he had all the answers, but because he refused to let the situation define him. That's what happens when you rise above the expected. You stop letting outcomes be dictated by trends and statistics. You recognize that what looks impossible isn't the end. It's just a setup for something greater. It's not about ignoring what's happening. It's about refusing to be controlled by it. You might have real challenges. There might be things you can't explain or fix right now. But there's something inside you that can still believe for more. That inner strength, that unshakable hope. It comes alive when everything else goes quiet. Think about the moments in your life when you surprised yourself. When you stepped into something you didn't feel qualified for. When you moved forward even though fear tried to hold you back. When everyone said it wouldn't work, but you did it anyway. Those moments weren't built on logic. They were built on boldness, on courage, on trust in something greater than yourself. It's easy to follow the rules when things are working. But it takes another level of confidence to keep believing when the numbers don't add up. That's where growth happens. That's where dreams are born. That's where you move from ordinary to extraordinary. People may call it unrealistic. They may say you need to be more practical. But practicality has its place. And so does belief that dares to go beyond. If you only ever act when you have proof, you'll miss the moments where your future is waiting for you to act first. There's something powerful about choosing to believe in what isn't visible yet. To take that step, even when there's no path. To speak life over something that others have declared finished. Those are the moments that shape your legacy. What you're facing today may not make sense. The facts may be stacked against you. But just because you can't explain it, doesn't mean it's not already working in your favor. Just because others have never seen it happen, doesn't mean it won't happen for you. You may not see the full picture now, but something's shifting. The delay has purpose. The detour has meaning. And the outcome has already been written in your favor. You just haven't arrived at it yet. So don't limit your future to what makes sense right now. Don't let the current situation define the rest of your journey. There's more ahead than what's visible. More potential, more answers, more healing, more opportunity. But it starts with how you choose to see. Lift your eyes above the surface. Tune out the noise, quiet the doubts, and start expecting to see things unfold in ways you've never imagined. Because when you dare to go beyond what's obvious, you step into a realm where anything can happen. There are seasons in life when nothing seems to add up. You look at where you are, you measure it against what you expected, and all you see is a gap. Gap between the dream, the reality. Between the promise and the progress. And when things don't make sense, the natural tendency is to pull back, to stop hoping, to assume it's not going to happen. But what if the delay, the confusion, the seeming contradiction isn't a sign that you've missed it, but that you're closer than you think? What if the moment things feel the most uncertain is the moment something is actually shifting in your favor? See, there's a pattern to how big things come to pass. It rarely starts with clarity. It starts with discomfort, with something that doesn't align with your understanding. Maybe it's a door closing you didn't expect, a rejection that's a turn in the road you didn't plan for. It doesn't feel like the start of something beautiful, but often that's exactly what it is. Think about how many turning points in history, in your own life, started in ways that made no sense. A man is told to build a massive boat when there's no rain in sight. A woman is promised a child when she's long past the age. A leader is asked to speak boldly when he stutters. On the surface, none of it looks logical. But that's where the power lies. In the place where the outcome isn't obvious. The extraordinary isn't born in comfort zones. It doesn't emerge from perfect plans. It rises up from the very moments that seem backwards, misplaced, confusing. It comes wrapped in situations that make you question, that stretch you, that force you to look past what's right in front of you. And here's the best things in life aren't always going to be handed to you in a package that makes sense. They're not always going to arrive in a way that fits your timeline or expectations. Sometimes they show up disguised as detours. Sometimes they come through closed doors that hurt. But hidden underneath the uncertainty is something far more powerful. A shift that's setting you up for a breakthrough. There was once a woman who applied to dozens of jobs and kept getting turned down. Every no felt heavier than the last. But instead of giving up, she started writing her own business plan. That wasn't the original route. It didn't follow her degree or her years of experience. But deep down, something told her, this is it. Years later, that business employs hundreds of people. Every door that closed wasn't rejection. It was redirection. That's how it works. You may not recognize it in the moment. You may question it, wrestle with it. But when you look back, you'll see the pattern. That the things that didn't make sense at the time were actually the building blocks of something greater. It's easy to trust when everything lines up, when the road is smooth, when the signs are clear, when the progress is visible. But that kind of trust doesn't stretch you. It doesn't deepen your strength. It's when you're standing in the middle of uncertainty and you still move forward. That's where the growth happens. And here's the challenge. Don't dismiss what doesn't make sense. Don't automatically assume that if it's not going the way you expected, it's going wrong. Some of the greatest turnarounds come in the most unexpected forms. That broken relationship might be the doorway to emotional healing. That job loss might be the spark for your creative calling. That move you didn't plan might be placing you in the exact place where favor is waiting. We serve a creator who specializes in flipping the script. What looks like the end is often just the beginning. What seems like a dead end is actually a launch pad. The setback isn't to stop you, it's to prepare you, to refine your focus, to get you to lean in, listen closely, and believe deeper. You may be walking through a chapter right now that doesn't make sense. You're doing the right things, but the results aren't lining up. You're trusting, but the answers aren't showing up the way you thought. Let me tell you, that's not the time to give up. That's the time to dig in, to look closer. To recognize that the very thing you're questioning could be the doorway to the answer you've been waiting for. Keep your heart open. Keep your expectations high. Keep your spirit sensitive. Because just beyond what you can explain, just outside the lines of what's reasonable, is the beginning of something your current circumstance may not look like a breakthrough. But look again. Something is happening behind the curtain. Something is being stirred in your favor. The pieces are coming together in a way you wouldn't have chosen. But one day, you'll look back and realize it had to happen just like this. What you're standing in right now might be the stage for something miraculous. It might be wrapped in confusion, but it's holding something powerful. The outcome may not be visible, but it's already being written. So don't retreat, don't shut down, don't write off what you don't understand. Because the very situation you're tempted to walk away from might just be the one that changes everything. There is a quiet whisper inside each of us that speaks before the facts do. It's not always loud, it's clear, but it carries a deep knowing, a sense of direction, a fire that won't go out. It's that dream that keeps returning even when you've tried to ignore it. That passion that won't be silenced, no matter how much you try to talk yourself out of it. That nudge that doesn't come from the outside. It rises from within. But here's the challenge. That whisper often gets drowned out by what's practical. It gets buried under the weight of expectations, statistics, timelines, and opinions. The moment you start stepping out with boldness, it's easy for that voice of reason to step in and say, well, be realistic, stay safe, that's too far-fetched. And if you're not careful, you'll let external realities cancel an internal calling. Many people are walking through life doing what makes sense, but not what makes purpose. They've chosen the path that looks stable, but feels empty. They've ignored what stirred in their soul, because it didn't align with what they could calculate. They traded passion for predictability, and in doing so, settled for less than what they were made for. You were never created to just exist within limits. That thing inside of you, that idea, that assignment, that dream, is not random. It was placed there on purpose. It wasn't designed to be understood by everyone. It wasn't given to others to carry out. It's okay if no one else sees it yet. It's okay if the numbers don't support it right now. The most powerful journeys begin in obscurity. The greatest breakthroughs start with someone who dared to believe beyond what made sense. Think about the young man who left his stable job to follow a stirring in his heart to start a nonprofit. It didn't align with his education. It didn't promise a steady income, but he couldn't shake the vision. Everyone around him questioned his decision. The wise advice was to wait, to build more security first. But he followed what he knew deep down was right for him. Years later, that organization is changing thousands of lives. And he almost missed it because of logic dressed as caution. Or the woman who had a burden for foster care reform. She wasn't in politics. She had no law degree. But she had first-hand experience and an unshakable desire to make a difference. She started with small gatherings. Then came the petitions, the partnerships, the doors that seemed to open out of nowhere. Today, her work is shaping policy. Not because it made perfect sense, but because she refused to silence the voice that was calling her to more. That could be you. Maybe you have a vision that keeps coming to your mind, but it feels too big. Maybe you're feeling led to change careers, relocate, start a ministry, write a book, build a business. But the facts say now isn't the time. You've looked at your finances. You've considered the risks. And nothing about it lines up with what you expected your life to be. But here's the truth. What's been placed in your heart isn't there to tease you. It's there to lead you. And just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it's not real. Some of the most world-changing moves were made by people who said yes before they had all the answers. You don't need all the support to begin. You don't need every door open. You just need the courage to start. And when you do, provision will show up. Favor will find you. Connections will appear. But it all begins when you stop trying to make perfect sense and start leaning into purpose. You're not being irresponsible by believing in what you can't yet see. You're not crazy for trusting something that stirs so deeply it keeps you awake at night. That's not just ambition. That's not just emotion. That's destiny calling you forward. You may have voices around you telling you to play it safe, that you're not qualified, that it's too late. What voice are you going to listen to? The one that doubts your future, or the one that designed it? Every breakthrough starts with one decision. To follow the inner compass instead of external circumstances. To stop letting conditions dictate your direction. To stop waiting for everyone's approval before you act. The truth is, not everyone will understand your assignment, because it wasn't assigned to them. When the stirring won't go away, when the desire keeps showing up, when the vision won't leave you alone, it's because you're meant to do something with it. Stop waiting for it to make sense to others. Stop waiting for every condition to be perfect. Start walking with boldness, even if it's just one small step at a time. You'll never know what's possible until you stop talking yourself out of it. That thing that's in your spirit, it's not a coincidence. It's not an accident. It's the seed of something bigger than you imagined. And it's waiting on your willingness to believe, even when the facts say otherwise. You don't need clarity to move forward. You just need trust, because what you carry is more important than what you lack. And once you stop allowing reason to override your calling, you step into a life that isn't just successful, it's meaningful. The question isn't if the guidance is there, the question is if you'll honor it. When life gets noisy, that's your cue to get quiet. Not to react, not to panic, but to pause. Because wisdom rarely competes for attention, it waits for invitation.
It waits for invitation.
And when you create space to hear it, it will guide you every time. Don't let temporary noise cancel permanent peace. Don't let external confusion cause internal compromise. Learn to trust that subtle direction, even when others don't understand. Because what's quiet now will become clear later. There's something powerful that happens when you stop asking everyone else what to do and start tuning in to what's already been placed inside of you. That's where discernment grows, can't they? That's where confidence develops. That's where you stop doubting and start stepping. Yes, the noise may keep coming. The critics may keep talking, the doubts may keep rising, but the inner voice, the one that leads with peace, aligns with truth, and carries purpose, that voice is greater, and it will never steer you wrong. So turn down the volume of the world, step away from the chaos, tune into the whisper. Because in that stillness, direction is waiting. Your next chapter is waiting. There will come a time in everyone's journey when human effort reaches its limit. You've tried everything you know. You've worked hard. You've given it your all. You've made the calls, said the prayers, knocked on the doors. And yet nothing seems to be moving. The reports aren't changing. The people aren't responding. The progress isn't showing. That's when many throw their hands up and say, maybe this just isn't meant to be. But what if that moment isn't the end? It's the beginning of something greater? What if the season where everything seems stuck is the setup for something beyond explanation? There's a line you reach where your ability stops, but that's often where another power begins. A power that isn't limited by effort, logic, or resources. A power that doesn't need favorable circumstances to operate. A power that doesn't ask for permission to move. It's in those moments, when everything natural seems to fail, that you're invited into a realm that doesn't follow ordinary rules. A realm where provision shows up out of nowhere, where peace arrives in the middle of chaos, where doors swing open that you didn't even know existed. This is where the unusual happens, where stories shift suddenly, where delays become breakthroughs. Not because of anything you did, but because of something you believe. When you come to the end of your strength, don't see it as failure. See it as an invitation to lean on something greater, something unseen but undeniably real. It may not show up when you expect it, but it's never late. It may not look how you imagined, but it's always on time. Think about the stories that have inspired you most. The ones that moved you weren't about people who had everything figured out. They were about people who reached the edge of their own power and then watched something bigger take over. A family that didn't know how they would make it, and then help came from an unexpected place. A person who was given no chance to recover, and yet healing came anyway. A situation that seemed too far gone, and then hope turned the whole thing around. Those moments don't happen because everything is perfect. They happen in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the wilderness, when everything in the visible world says it's over. That's exactly when the invisible starts to move. Not because of what's seen, but because of what's believed. It's easy to feel strong when things are going right. When the bills are paid, when your health is solid, when the relationships are smooth. But true strength is revealed when nothing looks certain. And you still choose to hold on. When everything says, quit, something deeper says, wait. That's where character grows, and that's where unexplainable outcomes begin to rise. You may be walking through a season right now where you've done all you can, and it still feels like not enough. You've prayed, you've worked, you've stayed faithful, but the answers haven't shown up. Don't be discouraged. You're in the perfect position for something extraordinary. Because it's not about what you can control. It's about what you can believe for. When your hands are empty, your faith becomes full. When your plans fall through, a better plan is ready to unfold. When the people you were counted on walk away, the one who never leaves steps in. And he doesn't come empty-handed. He comes with restoration, with peace, with favor, with strength. There was a man who had lost everything. His career, his savings, his confidence. He had exhausted every option. Nothing was working. One day in desperation, he sat in silence. And in that stillness, An idea dropped into his heart. It wasn't from a book or a friend or a motivational speaker. It was quiet, but clear. He acted on it. That one idea sparked a turnaround that he never could have predicted. It didn't come from striving. It came from surrendering. The power of choosing to believe when you can't see. To trust when you can't understand. To rest when you want to panic. In that space, you open the door for the extraordinary to enter. And once it does, everything can shift in a moment. Don't measure your future by what's in front of you right now. What you see may look like a wall, but beyond it is something you can't yet imagine. Your current challenge is not the final word, just a proving ground for something greater. You may be out of option, but you are not out of hope. So if you're in a place where everything natural seems to have failed, good. That means you're in a position for something miraculous. That means you've cleared the stage for something no one else can take credit for. What's ahead of you isn't going to be average. It's going to be something that leaves people saying, that had to be divine. Stay steady. Stay open. Keep expecting. Because when your resources run dry, the real source begins to flow. When your strength runs out, power from above begins to pour in. When everything that should have worked doesn't, get ready. That's when the extraordinary shows up. There's a kind of journey that can't be navigated by maps. Kind of progress that isn't driven by perfect timing, ideal circumstances, or even complete understanding. It's the kind of path that doesn't unfold all at once, but one step at a time. Where the scenery doesn't always match the promise, but the promise is still true. Where things may not look like they're working out, but something deeper tells you they are. We live in a world that says, I'll believe it when I see it. But the greatest victories don't start with what you see. They begin with what you believe. They're built on trust that refuses to quit, on vision that pushes past what's visible, on confidence that's anchored in something great and certain. Some people never reach what was meant for them, not because it wasn't available, but because they couldn't see past what was in front of them. They saw obstacles and gave up. They saw delays and stopped believing. They saw what was lacking and assumed it couldn't be done. But what if the very thing you think is blocking you is actually bowing in response to your boldness? There's a hidden power in moving forward when you can't see the full picture, in speaking life over something that looks lifeless, in showing up even when it feels pointless. That's not denial, that's deep trust. That's strength others can't understand, and that's the key to seeing things shift. Sometimes you won't get a sign. You won't get confirmation. You won't feel ready. But that doesn't mean you're off track. That just means it's time to move forward based on what's been placed inside you, not what's happening around you. There's a story of a man who had a vision for building a youth center in a neighborhood full of crime and poverty. He had no budget, no support, and no building. But he had a picture in his he couldn't shake. While others saw statistics, he saw transformation. While others saw brokenness, he saw future leaders. And so he acted. He cleaned up a vacant lot. He painted murals. He gathered kids and borrowed spaces. One act of boldness led to another. Today, that center is thriving. Not because he waited until everything lined up, but because he moved even when nothing did. That's how impossibilities fall. Not by waiting until you're convinced, but by daring to keep going before you are. By deciding that what's ahead of you is greater than what's around you. By refusing to let what's temporary convince you to forfeit what's eternal. When you lead with inner vision, you live differently. You're not swayed by how things appear. You're not discouraged when there's no sign of change. You know that progress is happening even when you can't measure it. You understand that just because the answer hasn't shown up doesn't mean it's not coming. You're guided by something more powerful than sight. You're led by certainty that doesn't need evidence to act. You may be facing something right now that doesn't look like it's going to shift. You've been waiting, hoping, working, when yet the surface hasn't changed. Don't lose your confidence. What looks stuck is already being stirred beneath. What looks silent is already being spoken over. What looks impossible is already bowing to the strength of your trust. The mountain may not move instantly, but every step forward puts pressure on it. Every moment you refuse to quit weakens its hold, chips away at the wall. And before you know it, the thing that once seemed unmovable will be nothing but a testimony to how far you've come. Sometimes the biggest breakthrough isn't in the result, it's in the resilience, and refusing to back down, and choosing to believe again and again, even when it feels foolish. In holding your peace when the storm is loud. In standing tall when your emotions want to collapse. What you're carrying inside is more powerful than what's opposing you. You weren't created to be ruled by fear, by reports, or by delay. You were created to live from the inside out, to speak truth over lies, to take steps when others stand still, to rise up even after being knocked down. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for the signs to be obvious. Step forward, even if your voice shakes. Take action, even if your hands tremble. That's where the shift begins, not when everything is perfect, but when you decide that progress is worth pursuing even in the dark. And the beauty is this: when you live that way, the impossible doesn't stay impossible for long. Situations start shifting, people start noticing, doors start opening. Not because you forced it, but because you trusted enough to move. Let your hope outgrow your hesitation. Let your inner certainty overpower the outer noise. Let your vision become more real than your current view. Because when you move based on trust, not just sight, you won't just survive, you'll rise. And everything that once looked too big, too late, too broken will bow to the courage of a person who chose to believe anyway. You may not always understand the road you're on. The circumstances might not make sense. The path may seem uncertain, the timing off, the resources limited. But just because it's not clear to you doesn't mean it's not already planned for you. You weren't created to live only by what you can see. You were created to live by what's been spoken over your life, what's been placed deep within your heart. All throughout history, and even in your own life, the most defining moments didn't come when everything lined up perfectly. They came when you chose to believe anyway. When you chose to keep walking, even though there was no proof. When you said yes to purpose, even when logic said and no. You've got something in you that this world cannot measure. A vision that may not be understood by those around you. A calling that doesn't require the approval of facts. And when you stop letting outward evidence control inward belief, you'll step into a realm where things begin to shift. Not because of force, but because of faith. You may reach moments where the natural fails, where nothing around you supports the dream inside you, but don't give up. That's when something greater kicks in. That's when strength beyond your own rises. That's when what looked like a closed chapter becomes the start of a brand new story. Keep trusting the whisper, even when the noise gets louder. Keep honoring what's been placed in your heart, even when it doesn't make sense to others. Keep stepping forward, not because everything is certain, but because you're anchored in something deeper. If you will choose to live with vision beyond what's visible, to keep believing when it doesn't make sense, to keep pressing when everything says stop, then the impossible will bow, mountains will move, delays will break, favor will find you. Because the truth is, there's more for you than what meets the eye. Your best days aren't behind you. They're not lost in logic. They're waiting just beyond what's seen. And if you'll dare to see beyond it, you'll live beyond it.